An ordinary man working part-time at a pizza place doing deliveries. Ever so often he would experience events he calls revival. Random moments where he would go back in time by a couple of seconds. One day, he goes back in time a couple of seconds and stops a truck from colliding with a child on his way to deliver some food. Satoru, now hospitalized for his feat of bravery, is visited by his coworker Airi Katagiri, who reminds him of a tragic event from his past. The day after Satoru is released from the hospital, Sachiko, Satoru's mom, notices a man attempting to kidnap a child. After some digging, she comes to the conclusion that he was the true culprit of a kidnapping that happened in the past. But before she can tell her son, she's stabbed in her home and bleeds to death. The alleged culprit is none other than Satoru, and is now on the run from police. That is, until he's sent back to 1988 when he was still an 11-year-old kid. Although he's confused, Satoru is glad that he can be with his mother once more. Now, back in the past, Satoru needs to find out the reason that his mother was killed. While going through his everyday life, he takes notice of one of his classmates, Kayo Hinazuki, a girl that was killed during the kidnapping incident. Wanting to get to know Hinazuki, he invites her to his upcoming birthday in hopes of changing her grim future. When he finds out that Hinazuki has the same birthday as him, he can roughly plan the events of the past in his head. As he tries to find out clues to the events that led to the kidnappings, Satoru visits Jun, a friend of his, who was the original person who was arrested for the kidnappings. But Satoru knew his personality. He still doesn't believe that he committed such a crime. Satoru later finds Hinazuki abused and left in a freezing shed. Only then does he learn about the true nature of Hinazuki and her mother's neglectful and abusive relationship. He reports this to his teacher Gaku Yashiro, who has assumed such but couldn't provide any proof. Hinazuki was then accused of stealing everyone's lunch money due to her being poor and never paying for it before. However, Satoru stands up for her and shows her a secret spot where a Christmas tree lies. While the two of them were out at the planetarium, Satoru had a bad sense of déjà vu. He's concerned that he isn't making as much of an impact as he intended. After the original day that Hinazuki was supposed to go missing passed by without any incident, they were both able to celebrate their birthdays. Satoru is confident that he has achieved his goal of changing the past. However, that confidence is very short-lived, as the next day Hinazuki doesn't show up to school.
翌日、ひなずきは学校に来なかった。ひなずきと最後に交わした約束は果たされなかった。
After the disappearance of Hinazuki, a couple of days later, another girl from a different school goes missing. And after witnessing Hinazuki's mother throwing out her own daughter's belongings, everything comes crashing down, and he's sent back to the present, where he's still being chased by the police. He gets a call from his manager, who, while on the surface seems to have been looking out for him, is actually attempting to turn him over to the police. While running from the cops, he runs into Airi, who shelters him, and she believes that Satoru won't kill his own mother. While researching about events from the past, he notices that, although minor, there have been changes to the future. Later that night, after Airi stopped her manager from snitching, she gets a text message from Satoru's mother and notices what happened too late, as she is caught in a house fire. Satoru notices the fire and rushes in to save Airi. Before they part, she gives Satoru her phone, which lets him discover a number that his mother left behind. He arranges a meeting with an acquaintance who goes by Sawada, and he tells Satoru who called his mother before she was killed. Sawada also delves into the death of Hinazuki, and they deduce that the kidnappers from the past and his mother's murderer are the same person. Sawada goes to the hospital to make sure Airi is doing fine, only to find out Airi ran away, leaving her mother in her place.
はい、その友人の沢田と申します。
はじめまして。 愛理の母です。
Once the two meet up, she informs Satoru that a man named Nishizumi might be someone to look into, as he is the person who caused the fire at her house. With this new information, Satoru is relieved that he met up with Airi, but that moment is short-lived as the police tailed her and arrest Satoru. While he's being brought to his car, he spots a man in all black watching him. The very same man who left his house the day Sachiko was killed. Confident he was his killer, Satoru attempts to trigger revival on command.
頼む頼む戻れ
He's brought back in time to February 28th, 1988. The next day at school, Kenya tells Satoru that he has known about her situation for quite some time, and he's willing to help him with his plans. Once the destined day comes, Satoru sets his plan into action and throws a rock through Jun's window. This gets the attention of police and gives Jun an alibi which will prevent him from being falsely accused. He then comes across Akemi, who goes to push her down a flight of stairs when he's stopped by Kenya. With the sudden change of plans, Satoru decides to consensually take her to an abandoned bus for a couple of days until she is safe. During the night, an intruder enters the bus while Hinazuki is sleeping. Fortunately, she was able to hide in time, and the unidentified person left, leaving a backpack filled with tools that seem very capable of kidnapping a person. They also find a footprint that the person left, and Satoru remembers that this was used to incriminate Jun. After figuring out that the bus is no longer safe, he takes Hinazuki to his home to stay for the night. The next day, they go back to her house together to confront her mother for all of her crimes.
かよ、何日もどこをつけ歩いてんだ。こんな。あんたたち。
Obviously, she denies such claims and acts violently towards the child and parent, only to be caught red-handed by Yashiro. They suggest Hinazuki be separated from her mother, and just as Akemi is about to leave, she is scolded by her mother, who blames herself for not being able to help her after the divorce. Now that Hinazuki is safe with her grandma, Satoru moves on to the killer's next targets, Hiromi Sugita and Aya Nakanishi. The first being his classmate and the second a child from a nearby school. As he keeps an eye on the two, he's offered a ride home by Yashiro, and notices a large amount of candy in his glove compartment. Turns out, he uses it as a replacement for cigarettes. After meeting back up in the bus, the three notice that a lot of the items that used to be in the bus are gone. With the cat out of the bag, Satoru decides to tell them about the entire reason that he was doing this in the first place, which was to stop the killer from committing his crimes.
俺はお袋の前で泣いたっけ二度と同じ思いはしたくない誰も一人ぼっちにはしない俺なら助けられるはずだ
With Hiromi under his wing, they work together to approach Aya, who at first was a little skeptical about the group, but later joins them at their hideout. Satoru then notices that Misato, the girl who framed Hinazuki of stealing lunch money alone, and decides to follow her to a hockey game. He then notices a truck that belongs to Jun's family following the sudden disappearance of Misato when she enters the bathroom. Yashiro runs into Satoru and offers him a ride in his car to try and catch the truck. Satoru, remembering the candy in the glove box, offers Yashiro one only to find out that there aren't any inside. They enter a tunnel and Yashiro reveals that the car they're in, that isn't his. Misato wasn't the target this time, it was Satoru. It was certain that Satoru knew of his plans, and thus it was decided to remove him and make it look like an accident. With the seatbelt stuck and snow falling outside, he is sent into the freezing river. Cursing Yashiro to death, Satoru yells one last sentence.
Yashiro! 俺はお前の未来を知ってるぞ!
However, Satoru isn't dead, and he wakes up from his 15-year coma not in the present that he knew, but in a new one. Unfortunately, he lost most of his memory, including the identity of the killer. While he is going through rehab, he is visited by many of his old friends, including Hinazuki, who now has a child. He then meets Kumi, a kid with leukemia, and none other than Yashiro himself, who he doesn't seem to recognize. 2 days before Kumi's surgery, he's taken to the roof by Yashiro. Once there, Satoru confronts him saying,
Yashiro. 俺の記憶は 戻っているぞ。
He recovered his memories after talking with Hinasuki and informs Kenya and Hiromi about what happened to him. Yashiro, with confidence that he wouldn't be convicted, reveals how he spiked Kumi's IV drip and plans to frame Satoru for the crime. Knowing Yashiro's true nature, Satoru calls his ex-teacher's bluff, claiming that Yashiro can't live without him, and dashes off the building. Yashiro stops him but then accepts it and lets go of him to die. As he prepares to follow along, he looks down at the sight of Satoru laying on a cushion. Yashiro is arrested for attempted murder, and several years pass. Satoru then goes on to become a mangaka, and on a fateful day, under the bridge that they parted at, he follows a butterfly that guides him back to Airi once more.
一緒に雪宿りしてもいいですか？